Everyone. Today I want us to look at the place values and the standard return algorithm. Okay, so with the place values, one of the things that happen is that we need to understand the decimal numbers or the decimal number system. Because while we understand the decimal number system, it is one thing that made us understand um, how the place value works. So, for example, if you look at the place value here, you know you've got the units, the tens, the hundred, the thousand, and the 10,000, and so on. So basically, you know that the units is the ones, the tens is you have the 10, and then the hundreds. And all these are based on the concept of 10 to the power 0, 10 to the power 1, 10 to the power 2, 10 to the power 3, 10 to the power 4. Which means that 10 to the power 0, anything to the power 0 is equals to 1. And that's how we get that 1. 10 to the power 1 is 10, and 10 to the power 2 is 100, 10 to the power 3 is 1,000, and 10 to the power 4, it's a 10,000. So while we know this, if, for example, I've got a number 34,675. So you will see that, first of all, I will have 5 to the power 10 to the power 0 multiplied by 5, right? So basically, each and every value we just multiply it by the value within that particular place value, and then we'll be able to get the number. So, for example, we know that here, this is the 10,000 value. So with the 10,000 value there, you tend to understand that it's going to be 10,000 multiplied by 3, which gives us 30,000. Okay, and then 4 multiplied by 1,000 will give us a 4,000. That's how now we end up with 34,000. So each and every one gets to be given its own value. So based on what we have there, so this is what? 10 to the 0 multiplied by 5. And anything to the power 0 is equals to 1. And 1 times 5, it's 5. Then you move on to the next one, which you have 10 to the power 1. 10 to the power 1 there is equals to 10. Multiplied by 7, it's 70. Can you see? And that's how we're getting the 70 here. Okay? And then we move on to this 6. 6 is the same as 10 to the power 2, which is 100. 100 times 6 is 600, which is what I'm getting here. Okay? And then here, you've got 10 to the power 3, which is 1,000. Multiplied by 4, it's 4,000. That I get this 4,000. And so on. So basically, this is how the numbers are aligned. So which means each and every number is 10 times the value of the next place value there. Okay, so let's look at the place value as money. So for example, let's say you are teaching and then you want to use place value as money. So different teachers use different methods depending on what you feel that learners will be able to understand. Others use the 100 Rand, 10 Rand, and 1 Rand, and then others use the 1 cent, 10 cent, and 1 Rand. Depending on which one you feel comfortable with. So I feel more comfortable with this side compared to that side, but both of them, they work. So I'll be using the 100 Rand, the 10 Rand, and the coins, okay, in order for me to be able to explain my place value using the money. Okay, and this, when you look at it, you'll understand that the concept of money just stay as it is, that you've got the 100 Rand, the 10 Rand, and the 1 Rand. And while you know that, everything is embedded on the fact that the money stays as it is. Okay. So one of the things that we are looking at here is that we're looking at the concept of how are the monies normally get to be prepared. So for example, let's say I've got 235 Rand, right? So I've got 200 Rands, 30 10 Rands, and 5 1 Rands. Okay. And basically, this is how they are allocated. And then you can see that this definitely. So if I'm saying I've got 2 here, it means I've got 200 Rands, I've got 3 10 Rands, and I've got 5 1 Rands. Okay. And that's how it's normally work in terms of looking at the concept. Okay. So now, basically, everything is embedded in the fact that you know that 100 Rand equals to 10 10 Rands, and 10 10 Rands is equals to 10 1 Rands. Okay. So now, let's look at the addition. For example, I've got 235 Rand and I'm adding it to 128 Rand, right? So in order to do this, I need to understand, okay, that for example, what is what? So in this case, you know that if I were to add these numbers here, or this money here, okay, exactly how much? This is 10 Rand. Okay, so basically, you know that this will give me 10 rand. So because it gives me 10 rand, it becomes easier for me to what? To carry that 10 rand to this side, right? And then I'm just left with 30 rands here. Okay. And then based on what I have there, it becomes easier for me to start calculating, right? So in terms of my calculations there, I can then move on to making things easier. Okay. So in this case, sorry, what I'm having now is now I've got 3 1 rands, and then I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then I've got 6 10 rands. Okay. And then I've got 300 rands. Okay. So all in all, if you look at this, then I can able to talk about how much do I have all in all. Okay. And this becomes easier in terms of how one learn to understand this particular concept. Okay. That this is like what? 363 rand. Okay. And that's my addition. Okay. Now, let's do another example where we look at the subtraction. So again, here I've got 235 rand, okay? And I'm subtracting 157. Okay. So this becomes easier. Sorry. This is what I wanted to say. 235 rand minus 156 rand. Okay. So based on what I have there, I have to start by subtracting, right? So I've got 5 rand minus 6 rand, which means I can't. And because I can't, I'm going to come here and borrow a 10 rand, right? After borrowing a 10 rand there, then the 10 rand there that I just borrowed there, you know that that 10 rand that I borrowed, it will come as what? As 10 rands. And 10 rands there becomes 10 coins. Okay. And 10 coins, that gives me 10 rand. Then from there now, I'm now left with 2 10 rands here, but this side I now have additional 10 coins. Okay. Then now I can start doing the subtraction, right? So in my subtraction there, it becomes easier in terms of I will see that I've got how much? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So it's 15. 15 rand minus 6 rand, I'm left with 9 rands, which is 9 1 rands. Okay. Then I move on there. I've got same thing here that is going to happen there. Now I've got two 10 rands minus 5 10 rands. Same thing here, I can't, right? So I'm going to go again and what? And borrow the 10 rand. So I'll take the 10 rands there, and then I'm left with 1 rand, 100 rand there. And then this will come in the form of 10 rands, right? And if it's coming in the form of 10 rands there, then it becomes easier than now. You can see that now I've got 1 rand, I've got now this 10 rands that I came here. So in terms of my subtraction, it becomes easier now that I can then say what? Here we already gotten a 9 1 rands, right? And now here I'm subtracting these ones. I'm going to get what? I've got 12 minus 5. I'm going to get 7 10 rands, right? Which is 7 10 rands. And then here, I do again there, and then I've got 100 rand minus 100 rand, and then I'm going to get 100 rand. So basically, I only have 79 rand, which is the same as 79. Okay. And that's how we normally do. So you can see that it becomes easier in terms of understanding how we normally do these numbers. Okay. Now, let's look at this particular question here. What error is the learner making here if we're looking at the errors? So if you look at this question, a learner here, they went to the 8,000, right? And borrow 1,000, and then they are left with a 5, right? Then they put it here, and it becomes a 15. It comes as a 10. But then by means of looking at this, if you're having a 15 here and you borrowed 1,000 there, and then they say 15 minus 7, they got 8. Okay. Then the gain here, there was a 0. They go and borrow from the 8 again. They're left with a 6. And then it comes here as a 10. Then 10 minus 5, you get a 5, right? But the problem is with this method that you can see is that he borrowed 1,000 and then he gave them a 10. Then the whole 990 is missing, right? He didn't do anything with it. Next thing, when you go and borrow again, he borrowed 1,000 and then he give them a 100, because this is like 10 tens, right? and then the whole 900 is missing, is nowhere to be found. So if you look at these answers, the way it's going here, there seems to be numbers that are just missing. And that's the error that the student is making. He's not accounting for the number that he's borrowing. And that's what makes this mistake an error. Okay. So again, people use different ways in terms of doing the subtraction. Others using the borrowing method, others use the regrouping method. But both methods are acceptable depending on who's teaching you. Okay. However, with the borrowing method, some of the teachers will say, why are we borrowing? Because we're not going to give it back, right? So why should we use this method? But is it wrong to use the borrowing? Again, don't forget when we teach this particular concept, we're also teaching learners some manners and some politeness. So that's why we use the borrowing language. But again, others don't use borrow, others use take. But depending on what you are doing, because when you take something, you're not going to bring it back. Okay. But depending on what you say. So I want you to look at this method, the way I'm going to do this. Okay. I'm going to say 8 minus 9, which I can't. I go borrow next door. Next door, there's a 0. Then I go to the next door. And then I borrow a 1. And then they're left with a 6. 6 comes as a 10. And then they remember that, oh, by the way, they came and borrow. So we borrow a 1, and then they're left with a 9. Okay? And then that 1 comes here as a 10. 10 plus 8, it's 18. 18 minus 9, it's a 9. Then I've got 9 minus 9, I've got a 0 there. And then 6 minus 3, I've got a 3 there. And this becomes my answer. Now, based on how I was saying this, you can see that there's a lot of discrepancies in terms of how I'm saying things, right? One, look at this thing that I'm talking about here. I'm saying you subtract 9 from 8, right? Here it's not just 9 from 8, right? You are subtracting the units. You are subtracting the different things here. So you subtract 9 from 8. So if I'm subtracting 9 from 8 here, what am I getting? I'm supposed to say no, you subtract 9 units from 8 units. Okay, since it is not possible, I can't say it's not possible to subtract 9 from 8, right? Because why? What happened when they get to grade 9 or grade 7 when they start doing the integers and the numbers are subtractable? Then they're going to say, but say in grade 2 said, we can't subtract a bigger number from a smaller number. So we just said that here, you must say it differently. Or you just say, since the numbers here is a bigger number and a smaller number, then you go borrow. Okay. And then you will have to borrow from 0, right? What is 0 there, right? And then you don't just say we're going to borrow next door. Next door, where is next door? Left or right? So when you say you're going to borrow next door, it means that you're going to borrow from the tens, right? And this makes you understand what is happening. And when you say 1 comes as a 10 to the 0, you can't say 1 comes as a 10. It doesn't come as a 10, because then why? It comes in form of 10 times the value that you have borrowed, or you're borrowing to, or you are lending. Okay. And this makes you understand this particular concept of what we normally do. So how do you normally have to say this particular concept, right? You start from the right and then move to the left. You subtract 9 units from 8 units. Can you see? Since you are subtracting a larger number from a smaller number, you will need to borrow from the next higher place value. Okay? And this is the reason why I want to make the number subtractable. But I don't have to tell the learners that no, it is impossible. Okay? So they take this as a procedure that is normally done. Okay? And then, however, the tens place has a 0. You see, I go borrow from the tens. I don't go next door. And the tens has 0, so you cannot borrow directly from it. Therefore, you will borrow from the 100. Okay? Or you will borrow 100 from the hundreds place. Then the 100 will be reduced from 7 to 6, right? After reduced from 7 to 600, and the borrowed 100, right? The borrowed 100 will be added to the tens place, making it what? 10 tens, right? Now you borrow a 110 from the tens place to the units place. Then the tens place will be left with 9 tens, and the borrowed 110 is equivalent to 10 units, which when added to the 8 existing units, it will give us 18 units. Then you subtract 9 units from 18 units, which gives you 9 units. And then you subtract 9 tenths. From 9 tenths, you get 0 tenths. And then you subtract the 600s. You subtract the 300s from the 600s, and then you get the 300s. And then you have 309. Okay. And then you can see by means of doing this, all the numbers are counted for. Okay. And this is similar to how we were doing the money. So it becomes easier for them also to understand how this particular concept is being done. Okay. So basically, another way of looking at this is when you look at this now, because that we always have this HTU, right? So I can say 5 units, and then I could say 6 units. That's why we say 5 units minus 6 units. We can't. We go borrow next door, or we go borrow from the tens, right? At the tens, we've got 3 tenths. We take 1 10 and take that side, and then we are left with 2 tenths. Okay. And then 15 units minus 6 units, we get 9 units. Okay. And then 2 units minus 5, so 2 tenths minus 5 tenths. So we're going to go and borrow 100, right? And then we're left with 100 there, right? After left with 100 there, then now here, I now have what? 100, that comes in tenths. So I've got a 10 plus the 2, which is 12. And then 12 minus 5, I'm going to get what? 12 minus 5, I get 8. Okay, then I've got 1 minus 1 there, which gives me 0, and that just gives me 89 rand. Sorry, 89. Okay, 80 tens and 9 units. Okay. Okay, so as we move on there, then you will see from what I have there now. Then others talk about the regrouping, which is the different method. So the regrouping is that you regroup the number to make it subtractable, and you normally regroup the one that is being the subtrahend. So if you look at what I have there, I've got 708 minus 399. So I regroup the 708 into 610, into 600s, the 90, and the 10 and the 8, or which is the 8 in there. So you can see that this number has been regrouped. Then from there, I just subtract the 18 minus 9 there, which I'm going to get a 9. Then I'm going to have 9 tenths minus 9 tenths, which gives me a 0 tenths. And then I've got 600s minus 300s, which is going to give me a 399. Okay, which is going to give me 309 as the answer. Okay, now just for improvement's sake, if you look at this question here, this learner here, he was asked to do this sum of 805 minus 457. In this sum, he go next door and so he goes to the tens, and the tens didn't have anything. Then he goes to the hundreds, and then he borrowed 100 and left with an 8. Sorry, he crashed the 8 and left with a 7. That 100, he took it directly to the units and added 100 to the 5, you get 105 units. Then you subtract 107 from 105, you get 98. Then he put an 8, and then he carried a 9. Then the 9 here now is a 9 tenths. So 9 tenths minus 4 tenths there, this gives you a 4 tenths. Then the 700s minus the 400s will give you the 300s. Okay. So also to avoid confusion, we always have to write this particular concept of hundreds, the tenths, and the units, so that you can always refer to it. Okay. And if you look at this method becomes a perfect method because, again, it doesn't leave the numbers behind. The only downfall with this method is that you have numbers like 105, which is too big, because one of the particular concept about this, or the main idea about using the standard return algorithm, is so that I can only deal with the number between 0 and 20. Okay. But then now, if I'm using this particular method, I'm using the hundreds, and this becomes too much. And then it defeats the purpose of using the standard return algorithm. So again, it's all about thinking. And with the thinking that is happening here, everything was done properly, in a sense that no numbers was lost compared to that method I showed you on the very first one. Okay, guys. If you have any question, feel free to send me an email. Then we can discuss it further. Okay. Have a lovely day.